Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sunday Morning Quarterback. Today, we are two pastors who love ministry, leadership, and sports. We've been on a little bit of an Easter break. I went on vacation. My dad's out of town doing a revival, but we are back because NBA playoffs are here. Adam, you doing all right today?
I'm doing great. I think it's about 68 degrees here in the Richmond area. Beautiful day the Lord has given to us.
Nice. Well, it is great to be back with everybody. We have missed it, but, sometimes you just need to take a break. For those of you that don't know, Easter season in ministry is a tough one. And so we went to Chicago for a few days, which from a sports perspective, Adam, I think Chicago might be the best sports city from top to bottom. We went to a Cubs game, which I'll have to tell you about my experience with the play clock. That was interesting. And then we went to a Chicago Bulls game. And so did that. My dad is on the road today. He is traveling, doing a revival, which is kind of cool because, people don't have revivals much anymore nowadays. They talk like they're a thing of the past, but he's on the road doing that, and we got some really cool guests lined up for the next few weeks. But, Adam, it's been a lot going on in sports. Let's jump in.
Before we do that,
okay.
I haven't had the chance because we've been off for a while. Anybody listening needs to know that you're no longer listening to Joseph Frajowski. This is Dr. Joseph Frajowski.
Yes. Thank you. I've joined your club.
Yeah, I hadn't had a chance to do this publicly, but congrats, man. I know how much hard work that takes, and I trust that when you clip this up, it'll say Dr. Joseph Frajowski at the bottom.
Oh, yeah. Let's just talk about how yours is going to say Dr. Adam Denny, and mine's going to say Doctor, and then there's just going to be my dad. He's missing out on that one.
Right, yeah.
So that's funny. Well, I appreciate that. It has been a long ride, and I wouldn't have got here without Adam telling me what to do and what not to do. So got graduation coming up in a few weeks, but, man, I am happy to be done with it. I'll tell you that. But let's jump into some sports. So we're going to kind of talk basketball heavy today because the playoffs are underway. But before we do that, let's talk a little Major League Baseball. I know we got a lot of Bravo fans out there. So, Adam, it's an interesting time in baseball. This whole clock has been implemented, and we're a few weeks into the season. What are your thoughts so far about the rule change, and just kind of what are you watching in the major leagues?
Yeah, for any of our listeners that listen to most of our episodes, you may have heard me say before that I've been saying for 10, 15 years that the MLB needs to make some kind of change. It used to be the most popular sport in America by far, and it's historically called the pastime. Well, times have changed. We don't need things to pass our time anymore. We've got a lot of, different things that we can do, a lot of options if we want entertainment or something to pass the time. So with that said, baseball has 100 and I think 60, 62 games a year. Most games are about 3 hours long. And if you know baseball at all, it's a very slow game. So when these rule changes were implemented, I was eager to see what it looked like. And, man, I'm just blown away. I couldn't be happier. I know a lot of the traditionalists may not like it. It takes some getting used to. But I think what it does for the average fan, again, in the fast-paced, overly saturated media content age that we live in, these games that used to be 3 hours are now closer to 2. That is a huge deal for Major League Baseball. Also, in widening the bases a little bit and the clock, because it forces the pitcher to speed up. There's going to be more scoring. So, man, I'm just excited about it. It is a change, but it's been a great kickoff to the new season. The Braves they have the second best record in the league, so I'm chopping on. I'm locked in on baseball.
Now, Adam, I'll come back to the rule change, but what would you say? I'm not a baseball expertise like you are, but I watch. What would you say is a healthy expectation for all of our Braves fans out there?
I think it's ring is an expectation. We have made deep postseason runs in the past few years, and of course won the World Series a few years ago. So I think the way the roster is constructed, both with hitters and defense and also with pitching, there's no reason that we shouldn't expect to win a World Series. Baseball is a little different because, there's a little more nuance and there's a lot more, tendency for people to win. It's rare you see someone win multiple World Series in a handful of years. But man, sky's the limit. Let's do it. They've got a great roster.
Yeah, I was at the Cubs game and I saw. Apparently, I didn't realize how much of a nerve I was touching in Braves country, but I saw Dansby, and man, he's a traitor, man. I can't believe he left. Braves faithful have turned on him, but man, being there in person, it was crazy. So we were kind of sitting behind the catcher, in between first and home, and you had the shot clock that the pitcher could see, and then you had the shot clock in the back. But then it was weird because you got the hitter who's having to watch the clock, and the pitcher too. And then anytime like the catcher would come up and talk to the pitcher, they were on the clock. And then anytime they'd switch innings and they're warming up and all that, they're on the clock. And man, it was moving. It wasn't any lagging. And so even from the fan experience, you definitely could tell. And I think that'll keep people engaged more and just definitely be something to watch for a long time. So anyway, baseball is underway. We'll have to watch, and as the races get a little tighter and going in the season, we'll stay locked in with that. But let's shift gears. NBA playoffs are here. We are, and I think heading into game 2, and every series has had a game. And so what we're going to do is we're going to break down one or two of the series that we're most intrigued by. And then here in a minute, Adam, we can go through and just do our picks, like who our winners are, and then how many games we see the series going in. But I'll start off first. The series, Adam, I want to touch on is the Clippers and the Suns, because I watched the whole game last night. And, this is really the first time, Adam, that we've seen Kevin Durant and Booker together. I think Durant's only played 8 games. And I was fascinated by the fact of, you hear about it, you see it on paper. But one thing I quickly observed is that the Suns traded a lot of their depth away. They're very good. Booker's a good shooter. Durant's a good shooter, but they don't have that 3-point sniper assassin that can just sit there like in the past. And so that was one of the things. And then I think a lot of people have underrated the Clippers because we know that Paul George is out. There's a good chance he might not come back to this series. And a lot of people wrote the Clippers off. But, man, let me tell you, Kawhi, man, whoo, he was killing them last night in the fourth quarter. He was dropping threes. They had Powell and some of the other guys. They were just hitting from all cylinders. I got to give it to him, Russ Westbrook. He didn't shoot well, but, man, he was swiping balls. He was getting rebounds. He was bringing energy. And I was shocked to see that Chuck, out of all people, picked the Clippers to beat the Suns. And so in my book, that would be a huge upset. So I'm not too sure. I think the Suns will get it together. Now, if Paul George were playing, this would be definitely an interesting series. So I think the Suns will win it. But, man, I don't know if they can – I don't know if they have enough firepower to go pound for pound with some of these other juggernauts, specifically if the Warriors can pick it up. What do you think?
Yeah, I watched most of the second half of that game, and I was like you. I'm watching – and I'm seeing Westbrook kind of be Westbrook, but I didn't realize that he had such a poor shooting night because he was just all over the floor.
Yep.
And say what you want about the guy, you can't ever say he doesn't try hard. And I think that always goes a long way. I mean, we're talking about a guy that not long ago was the MVP. Yeah, he's bounced around franchises. I think it's just a matter of fit. I never thought him with LeBron was a good fit because LeBron is so ball dominant. But I think he fits in well with the Clippers because they want to play defense, and they've got really the 2 best wing defenders in the NBA, if you just think of as a pair in the last, handful of years.
Yep.
So to throw him out there, just increase that intensity, man, it's tough to score on him.
Oh, yeah.
And, without PG, they're going to have a hard time. But I think if PG was playing, man, they could win this series, but I don't think they will.
Yeah, I don't think they will either, but, man, it was interesting. And Kawhi quietly reminded everybody, a lot of the aficionados would say Kawhi's had the best he's been playing the best in the world since about January. And he had that 3-ball going. He was hitting his mid-range. He was hitting his 3. He was really getting in his bag, as the young kids like to call it. So that will be an interesting series to watch. Adam, the second series that everybody's watching right now, and I'll hand it off to you, is the Golden State Warriors and the Kings. What did you think about Game 1, and how do you foresee this series going?
Well, if you didn't watch game one, it was incredible. You've got to make sure that you're watching these games. All of the experts were saying, this is going to be a high scoring, high octane series. And it was that in game one. And man, the Splash Bros were splashing on Saturday night. It was something else to behold. But then, the Kings were responding, and De'Aaron Fox, as a lot of people had been thinking, he was showing that he belongs. He's a star player. But I think given the fact that Fox had the type of game he did, Malik Monk was rolling, and it still took them barely eking that out at home with that crowd that is just craving. I think it's like for 16 years they hadn't been in the playoffs. Keep in mind that in between that time, the franchise almost moved, and then the fans threw a fit and basically kept their team there. That's a loud arena.
Yep.
But the Splash Bros, they're going to splash. I think this will probably go to 7.
Ooh, wow.
But it's going to be a good series. But it's fun to watch.
And De'Aaron Fox too. He's apparently, if you look at his next gen analytics, he's very clutch. And I'm happy for him because he's been faithful, and he's a really good player. He's just kind of gotten overlooked, and so it'll be interesting. This is the time when Clay is going to have to get back to being Clay. Can he do it consistently? I know the person you've been watching is Wiggins. How quickly can Wiggins shake off that rust, and then can the Warriors get back to form?
Yeah, there was a play at the very end where Wiggins was wide open for a 3 to tie it, to send it to overtime, and I think if he had been playing the past month or so, he makes that shot because he was wide open. And we saw how clutch he could be last year in the playoffs. And he was playing well even in the fourth quarter of that game. So, they're loaded, man.
So a lot of interesting stuff. So, Adam, let's do this. Let's go series by series, and we can add our short commentary. And we're going to pick our winners and our losers, or, who we have winning and then in what game count. So I'll go first with Heat and Bucks. Now, this is an interesting one because Giannis got hurt early in the game, and so that was why playoff Jimmy, he's been talking a lot of smack. He's like, hey, we turn it on in the playoffs. The Heat have been struggling all year, and everybody has had great anticipation about Milwaukee coming back because, Middleton was out last year, and a lot of people picked them coming out. So, Adam, have you heard if Giannis is going to be okay for Game 2?
No, last I saw, they're just monitoring it, so I don't think it's an injury. It's more just soreness, muscle type stuff.
Well, I think this one, because of that, will be a harder fault series compared to if he was there. So I will have this one going 4-2 to the Bucks, but I wouldn't be shocked if it went 7. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say Bucks in 6, assuming Giannis plays. If he doesn't play, if it's even 1 or 2 games, they're in trouble, and it will go to 7.
Agreed.
But as it stands today, I'll say Bucks in 6.
I agreed. Next one is Lakers Grizzly. Now, this is an interesting one too because the Clippers could have, if they would have laid off the last few games, they would have had to do the play-in. But a lot of people think the Lakers have an easier path to the Western Conference now because they don't have to go through some of the juggernauts. And so Anthony Davis got hurt, but I think he came back, if I'm correct. And man, the Grizzlies have been rolling all year, but this is the perfect series for LeBron. I think the Lakers win 4-2, maybe 4-1. And I just think LeBron's too much. This is where he accelerates. And Ja Morant had a great season, but they've had a lot of ups and downs with him in and out. So I think Lakers all the way. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Ja Morant is hurt. He got hurt at the end of that game. And
yeah, that's right.
He landed on his wrist, and that's not good. So if he's at full health, I could see it going to 6 games. But if he's not, this could be a sweep. And so with that said, I'm gonna meet in the middle and say Lakers in 5.
Yep, I agree. Next one is one that we previewed, but we didn't pick. Clippers and Suns. And I think with Paul George being out, I'm gonna say the Suns are gonna win it in 6. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Clippers. I think Kawhi is going to start to fade a little bit, but I wouldn't be shocked if they just can't get the chemistry quick enough. It's too early to tell, but I don't know that the Suns have the firepower that everybody thought they would on paper. So I will go Suns 4-2, but I wouldn't be shocked if it went 7. What do you think?
Great minds think alike. I'm going to go Suns in 6.
Mm,
And I think the Suns have the ability to win the championship.
mm.
And it's just a matter of attrition, man. Like,
Yep.
we keep going through these games. It's like Giannis, Ja,
Yep.
PG. It's like really there's about 6 or 7 teams that could win the championship, and it wouldn't surprise anybody. But as it is often true late in the year in the playoffs, it's who's available, who's healthy. So I'm going to have to roll with Phoenix on this.
Yep, I agree. This one I think we'll agree on. Nuggets, it's just a matter of how much. I think the Nuggets will either sweep or they'll win 4-1. But Jokic has a lot of eyeballs on him. He's won those MVPs. He's got to produce. And so it's time for him to win a series that he's the underdog in. So Jokic, let's see what you got this year. I say 4-1 or 4-0. What do you think?
Yeah, I think anything other than Denver winning is a upset. But at the same time, I need to say this. Anthony Edwards is an all-world talent. We're talking about a former #1 pick. I think he's in his 3rd year. If you ever watch him, particularly when he gets going, he is unguardable. He is unstoppable. He has the kind of NBA body that no one can guard him. He's quick enough to take you off the dribble and throw it down. I mean, he's one of the greatest dunkers of our time, but he also can shoot. So I want him to step up. The reason I say that is you've got Cat, who also needs to step up. He's been in the league for feels like a decade now.
Yep.
And then they've got Gobert, who can guard the rim and get the rebounds to let Cat get out because he is primarily a perimeter big. They need to win a series, and I think they can, but I don't think they're going to this time. Edwards has been he has not asserted himself in the postseason yet, and he needs to do that.
Yep, no, I agree. Next one is the Nets and Sixers, which I feel like even though Embiid's more than likely going to be the MVP, I feel like everybody's sleeping on the Sixers. So I would like to see them really flex their muscle. This Nets team, a lot of people don't pay attention because they traded everybody, but they're a hard-playing team. There's no reason, though, the Sixers shouldn't win this in under, I think, 4-1. If it goes past 4-2, that's a problem on Philly. So I'd like to see them win it sooner than later. What do you think?
Yeah, I've got a sweep in this series. And saying that, I need to acknowledge, Brooklyn, as much turmoil as they've had, they're still in some ways a stable franchise. Just when you think about how many stars they've had in and out of that organization over the last 10 years or so. But people are underestimating, I wouldn't say Embiid, but James Harden, not so much of a scorer as we commonly think of him as. But man, I think he's leading the league in assists, or he's like 2nd, and he's just dropping dimes. So yeah, you can't sleep on Philly.
Yep, he's been a good facilitator. We've talked about this one, but we'll give a prediction here. Kings, Warriors. Warriors came out and dropped the first game early, but I think the Warriors are going to roar back, and I think they're going to win 4-2, which is a win for Sacramento. They got a lot of good pieces to build around. But the question is, can Golden State get their swagger back enough to get back to the conference finals? I think they can. The question is, do they have enough time to get Wiggins healthy? Is the Draymond whole hoopla drama going to kind of loom over them all season? I say they get there 4-2. I think Sacramento has one more game to win, but they may only that may have been it. It may be 4-1. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it'll probably be 6 games. And, the interesting thing about this matchup is Sabonis, he's such a unique player because he's a big guy, but he can step out and he can guard any position. And that's really what Draymond Green has been. He's been the best guy that is able to do all those kind of things. So they're kind of evening themselves out. What needs to happen for Golden State to do what people expect them, De'Aaron Fox cannot get, I think he had 38 points. That needs to be a Gary Payton II and a Jordan Poole thing. Jordan Poole was absent. If those guys can step up, put some clamps on Fox, this series will end quickly.
Oh, no, I agree. This one's an interesting one. Knicks and Cavs. One of the guys who I've long admired, Donovan Mitchell, he's always played great when he was in Utah, but his teams came up short. Now, here is an opportunity, Donovan, where you can elevate. A lot of Knicks fans wanted the Knicks to go after you, and then instead you got traded to Cleveland. And so I'm going to roll with the Cavs on this one. I know the Knicks won game 1, but I think the Cavs are going to win in 7. I think it's going to be a tight series. I think Knicks are finally playing better under Thibodeau, but I don't know if they have enough firepower to go to all the way to win a series. That's what I think. What do you think?
I think this one will go to 7, and I'm with you. I was kind of upset when Mitchell ended up in Cleveland because he's wanting to leave Utah, and of all places to end up in Cleveland when he could have been in New York. And just imagine if it was Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, and Donovan Mitchell, they'd be a title contender. But I think Mitchell, like you said, is great in the postseason. So I think he's going to get them over this hump. It'll be a challenge, but Cavs will take it in 7.
Yeah, I agree. And then Hawks Celtics, I think everybody's going to be picking the Celtics. But the question, a lot of eyeballs on Trae Young. I saw the Hawks play a few weeks ago against the Bulls in person. And, I was really impressed with the guy they got, DeJounte Murray. And they had some shooters. They got some ballers. Definitely think they have enough to win one game. I'll say 4-1. But a lot of eyeballs on Trae Young. Can he make, they got the coach who used to be in New Jersey, and then he was out west. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he's a good coach. And so Trae Young's got to be careful that he doesn't get labeled a coach killer. So I have Celtics 4-1. The question is, did the Celtics have enough firepower to punch through? And I think, can they get through Milwaukee? That'll be the question to ask. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Trae Young, over the last few years, the Hawks are making the playoffs, but I'm going to just be honest. He's been choking.
Yeah.
And, you can't have a bad game against a team like Boston because if you have a bad game, it's going to turn into a bad series. So I think Boston's going to sweep the Hawks. And I think even though the Hawks moved some players around, like you said, got Murray, they still are missing a big piece in order to play with these big boys like Boston. So I got Boston sweeping.
Yep, I agree. All right, Adam, it's time. We're going to do our NBA Finals predictions. And as much as it pains me to say it, I've tried to think of ways I could get around it. I've been not wanting to do this all season, but I just can't help but think that the Golden State Warriors are going to come out of the West. And let me tell you, if I would pay money to see Kevin Durant and the Suns versus Golden State in the Western Conference Finals, or LeBron. LeBron gets another shot, and we know he's been on the wrong side of that one because all the Warriors teams were better. I just don't know if anybody in the West has enough firepower to get through Golden State. So I have Golden State representing the West, and selfishly, I hope while I think Boston and Milwaukee will meet in the finals, I personally would rather love to see Philly, but I think we're going to get a Golden State-Milwaukee showdown. Everybody's been kind of clamoring for that one for a while, and man, I sure hope Milwaukee can pull it out because I'll be honest, Adam, he is not arrogant. He's very humble, but man, I just don't think I could do another Steph Curry championship. If so, you might start arguing that Steph's the GOAT. And so I don't know who's going to win. I would say, I can't pick Golden State, but right now I'd have to say Golden State. So Golden State's my winner right now. I'd say them. Milwaukee, what do you think? What's your finals prediction?
Well, the past 3 years, I have predicted before the season starts, Warriors, Bucks. And like you said, they've not yet met in the finals. So I'm going to stick with the same pick I made when the season started this year again and go right there with you, man. We're in one accord today.
Man,
I've got Golden State. But just to reiterate what you said, there is so much parity, particularly in the West.
Yeah.
Because and I text you and your dad, if you think about the last 10 years in the NBA, it's been dominated by LeBron, KD, and Curry. So they're all in the same conference now, and they've got loaded rosters, and they're all healthy. The Lakers have a brand new team.
Yeah.
I honestly would not be surprised if the Lakers went to the finals.
Yeah.
But I've got to roll with my initial pick, and I've got Steph Curry solidifying himself, and I will not even give someone the chance to argue. If he wins another ring, he is the best point guard ever to live. No question, no debate.
Even over Magic Johnson?
Easily over Magic Johnson.
Wow, yeah. That'll cause some debate. Yeah, selfishly, I would like to see, what would be interesting? It'd be interesting to see a Milwaukee Phoenix rematch because, they were up early and then now they got KD. I think they'd be favored. I'd like to see Phoenix and Philadelphia. Philadelphia could punch through. Even the Lakers. I don't think they have enough firepower. LeBron would really have to reach in that bag. Anthony Davis, can he stay healthy? We'll see. But anyway, a lot of interesting things to follow in the NBA, which we'll be back on next week, and so we'll kind of take it kind of week to week through the playoffs. But anyway, we're going to segue to ministry and leadership, and today we wanted to hit on a topic that's kind of been on everybody's minds and hearts this year, and we want to speak specifically to Gen Z. And so, Adam, here in a minute, we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to our hearts, mainly because we're both parents and we both have younger children. And I have gotten a front row seat to this next topic because, one of the things that I've been privileged just to kind of help out and do at our church is lead our young adults. And the Lord is teaching me so much about Gen Z and how they learn and how they follow Christ. And so the question that we're going to start off with today, and Adam, for a change, I might actually go first on this one and hand off to you because I got a few thoughts. The question is, from a ministry and a leadership perspective, what are some observations in reaching Gen Z? And but as we jump into this, Adam, our young adult ministry that I lead on Wednesday nights called The Well, we have about 40 kids coming, and most of them are church kids that have grown up in the church all of their life. And us, we like to teach and we like to preach. And coming out of last year and into this year, we hit some pretty big doctrinal issues and really just covering some basic theology and teaching them and hitting a lot of good stuff. And as I begin to evaluate and ask the students what they took away the most or what they retained, what I found is that for Gen Z, while the traditional format of a youth service or a college service is, a time of worship and then to preach for 25 to 30 minutes and then maybe some discussion, they liked it and they engaged with it, but it was kind of coming in their ears and then whoop, going out, and they weren't able to retain it. And so what I had to do was I kind of took a step back and I just wiped the whiteboard clear. And I said, you know what, let me just start experimenting. And so one night, instead of me teaching for 30 minutes, because I love teaching, and I told them this, I said, guys, I have a baby who's 1 year old and we're going from milk to meat. And part of that transition is I've got to get the spoon out. I've got to open the food and I've got to get it out and, open up your mouth. And I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but Gen Z will let their parents, let pastors spoon feed them and give it to them. And that's a part of the process. But there has to come a point where Gen Z and the next generation has to learn how to get their arms around the Bible and the text on their own. And so I just said, Lord, what's something I can try? And so, Adam, what I did was I wrote down 3 to 4 questions. I said, if we were to teach somebody, we talked about exegesis a lot and preaching and how to exegete a text. And I just said, if I was to teach somebody how to exegete a text, what are some basic questions I'd ask? So the first question was, what does the text say, which is the heart of exposition? The second was, what does the text say about God? The third one was, are there any theological takeaways? And then the fourth one was, how can I apply this verse and its meaning to my life? And basically what I did was I said, guys, tonight, instead of me teaching you, you are going to teach each other. And I put the questions on the board and I read the text and I said, hey, we're going to read it. And I turned the music off. I said, no talking for 5 minutes. You and the text, just read through it. And then we divided up the verses, and this person had 1 through 2, and this person had 1 through 3. And they went through and they broke it. And I said, all right, now you're going to teach each other. I said, so if you had the first, 2 verses, share what you learned from the questions. And man, let me tell you, it was like the light switch turned on for some of them because they, for the first time on their own, had to interact with the text. And man, as we went around and began to share, I was blown away by some of the meat and the richness and the spiritual food that was coming out of it. So that told me something, that Gen Z digests scripture differently. And I think we need to tweak our approach. I'll pause there because I got a little bit more, but what are your thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, I'll just look at it in a different way. And think about, two main inescapable points of existing. And what I mean by that is these are things that it doesn't matter what you believe or where you're from, you can't avoid these two things. What is the meaning of life?
Mm,
And what is my identity?
mm,
I think, if we just think about our times that we live in, how it's so dominated by technology, the effect of social media, and then you just kind of see the drift culturally that is happening. It is these two things that we really need to understand as believers if we're going to reach people is what is the meaning of life? Is there meaning in life? Are we just here by chance? And also, who am I? What is my identity? Where do I belong? And the reason I say that is because, the pervading idea of our generation is that you do have an identity, but you get to define it. And once you have defined it, you've got to figure out which group or which category or subgroup of people you might fit in with. And of course, we as Christians understand the meaning of life is to know and glorify God. And that if you are a believer, your identity is in Christ. And
mm,
once you understand that, get your arms around it, put it on a Monday morning bootstrap level way of living, that changes everything.
mm-hmm.
And it gives you great encouragement in your spirit, confidence in who you are. So I think if we can dive into those to say, where are you trying to find your identity?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the meaning of your life? Because though you're young today, one day you will be old. I think another effect is that, we are living in such a kind of youth saturated age where the way we view older people, the way we even at times treat older people is to neglect them and not to consider that all of us are going to one day die. That is just I think, reality of living in a Western, very blessed culture with medicine and doctors and technology, that we rarely sit down and just by ourselves think one day I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something we all have to get settled. And it's something that I think everyone eventually thinks about. But we need to be sure that people are thinking along those lines early in life so that they make wise decisions and set themselves up for the rest of their lives.
Mm. And kind of what you touched on, I really think the identity part is a real struggle. Um, we're not those type of people that are like, hey, parents, if you're playing sports, that's bad. But I do think we can send our kids mixed messages when we say, hey, church is a priority, except for when, we have to be at the ball field for 2 months out of the year. And so then, and there's a lot of parents that really navigate that well. And, even when they are gone, they make an effort to do a Bible study with their kids. So I don't want to sound like I'm putting anybody down, but you're sending mixed messages to the kids saying, hey, it's a priority except for this. And so then when they hear whether it's education's important, or, if you're, softball or baseball or band or whatever, and their life consists of that for year after year, I think they just slowly but surely begin to find their identity in that. And I think a lot of Gen Z Christians, even Christian kids that have grown up in the church, really struggle of finding their identity in Christ. And many of them, their spiritual identity is found in their parents' faith and not their own. And one of the things, whether it be from what we saw from the Asbury revivals or different things, is I think they want authenticity, and I think they want to experience God for themselves. It's just as from a parent, how can we put them in environments to do that? And then how can we create ministries and churches that challenge to do that, and then help them put their identity in Christ in an authentic way? What are your thoughts on the identity part?
Yeah, it's one of those things to where I think what's starting to happen because we live in a culture where there's a sense in which the world is accessible to us. I got my little one coming in. Hey, bud.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. Look, hey, Daddy.
what's up, buddy?
Okay. All right,
You
bro.
doing all
Ah,
right?
close the door, okay?
Say, go Cowboys.
That's the other one.
So, Adam, what do you think the identity piece comes in? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think we live in a culture where we're starting to wake up to the reality that because we live in such a saturated culture of blessings, material things, and the ability to kind of just do what you want to do and reach for your dreams, nothing wrong with that. We're starting to realize that even if we do that and we have that opportunity, may we reach it, we find out it doesn't give me peace. And it's not the identity that I want. And then when you think about the predominant worldview of the day, which is really just nihilism, people are discovering like this doesn't work. And you're starting to see this even on secular news shows. Like the way that the world is being presented to us doesn't even make sense. It's not coherent, it's not logical, to try to find your identity in all of these different ways. So when someone understands who Christ is, what he has done, and then what that means for your everyday life, again, it changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you that peace that I truly believe everybody wants. They just don't know where it is or what it means for their life.
That's good. And Adam, to kind of wrap up, I made a list of just some observations that I've learned just in the 2 years I've been working with young adults specifically, but Gen Z, and some of these are pretty fascinating. And so if you are a pastor out there or a parent or somebody who works in a church, I think you'll find these interesting. Just real quick, Gen Z, like we said, struggles to have personal encounters with Christ. And so I always really try to confront them with the cross on their own, not what their parents think about Christ and the cross, but what do you think about Easter and the cross and what Jesus gave for you and all that entails in salvation? How does that affect you today, and how is your life changed by it? The next thing is that everything with Gen Z begins and ends with personal relationships. They're not interested in the sizzle or the lights. That doesn't mean you gotta slouch on those things. You gotta be professional, but they are not wooed by the big stuff. They want to see, are you authentic? Do you care enough to not hit me up one time, but are you going to continue to check on me after I share a little bit? And you've got to build rapport to get them to share with it, and then you've got to be consistent. Another thing that I've found fascinating is that they want to be challenged, but not chastised. They don't want to be browbeat, but they want to be challenged to read their Bible and to seek purity in their friendships and their relationships. I've really had a lot of success challenging them and pushing them to do reading plans, whether it's going through the Bible in a year or reading through the New Testament. So I think we as a whole, as the church and leadership and parents, we need to raise the bar, not lower it. Another thing is with Gen Z, I have found that you have to believe in them. You've got to speak things into them. You've got to see what they can't see about themselves, whether this be for future leaders in the church or in their friend group or in their job. I've found that they have a lower spiritual self-esteem. They don't always believe the best about themselves. And so you got to paint a picture and cast a vision of what they could be if they allowed God to lead and direct their lives. From a ministry and preaching standpoint, Adam, I found it fascinating that I think they like hard preaching. They like hard teaching. They want to hear what the Bible says about some of these hot topics that they're being faced with: sexuality, homosexuality, the trans conversation, alcohol, content consumption, whether it be the Netflix shows they watch. And I think this results to say that spiritual formation looks different for Gen Z. Everything I was talking about earlier is that we have to not be afraid as pastors and parents and leaders to wipe the board clean, because what we did 10 years ago may not work with them as far as ministry and our service model. And so how can we create ministries and churches that approach them in the best way to teach them how to understand the Bible for themselves? I always push my kids about how to think critically, critical thinking spiritually, not spoon feeding them, but teaching them how to pick the spoon up and begin to feed themselves. And part of this as a pastor is we just got to be willing to adapt. We've got to seek their feedback and what resonates with them. But we've also got to push them and challenge them to commitment. And then the last thing I'll hit, Adam, is a lot of churches are really struggling right now to adapt their church model, specifically on Sundays, to Gen Z. And I think the best thing that we need to do is we need to help them to have a place in our Sunday services and allow them to feel like they have a seat at the table. That doesn't mean that we're going to cater the whole thing to them, but we want to include them on the conversation of, whether it be how we're teaching or how we're setting our services up. We need to seek their feedback. We need to try to incorporate them, whether it be things like scripture readings or sharing testimonies. Gen Z does not respond well to high church because they don't feel like they can live up to it. They see that as, well, that's my parents' church, but we do church a little different. I think we've got to be careful of that, and we've got to give them a seat at the table. And so I don't know. Those are just some observations. Any thoughts, Adam, on any of those?
No, those were good. Just when you were talking, what came to my mind yesterday, I was preaching. I started on Joseph, and it's that first 11 verses where his brothers, it says three times they hate him,
Mm.
but it also says at the end of it, they were jealous of him. And I won't, spend every, point of application as to why they did that. But basically, to say this, most of my sermon was lacking in application. But then when I latched onto that word jealousy, I went to social media
Mm.
and I talked about how, again, the identity that we want, that we project, and often we see in others that we get jealous of, that is a big factor
Yep.
culturally.
Yep.
And here's what I said: no one stands up and says, I'm jealous or I'm
Mhm.
envious. But I think people deal with it a lot more than they would admit. And young ladies in particular, again, back to the identity with outward appearance and things like that. You think about the average kid these days. It used to be you would see, if you're checking out at the grocery store, the airbrushed models on the magazines, maybe a commercial or two. That was it.
Yeah.
Now, think about phones. Think about how many people we see every single
Mhm.
day and what that might be doing to our minds over time. It's a big, big issue that we need to understand and disciple young people towards.
No, I agree. And challenge your kids, man, not to scroll their life away. It's an easy thing to happen. But if you're a parent out there or a pastor, it can be kind of like, well, man, I don't know what to do, and put your hands down and let somebody else figure it out. But man, let me challenge you. Lean into it. Find some young adults, your kids, and just sit down and ask them. Ask them how they retain knowledge. Ask them if they feel like they're fed from the ministry that they're under or the sermon on Sunday. And the crazy thing is, our kids, I think, are generation alpha and then beta, and they're going to be a little bit different too. And so we got to put the work in to meet them where they are. But anyway, Adam, it's been fun jumping into it today. We'll be back next week with a special pastor from Phoenix, Arizona. We're going to talk a little bit about preaching. Pastor Joe will be back. Adam, have a great day. We'll continue to watch the playoffs. We'll see y'all next week.